Unaware her husband had just acquired her family's multi-billionaire dollar empire, the woman who once looked at him as nothing more than a struggling man packed her pearl-white suitcase beside their broken marriage bed, her diamond earrings glinting with the arrogance of someone who believed she won. She walked away from the husband she thought was poor, divorcing him to marry his best friend, the man who whispered wealth into her ears and promised her the world she thought her husband could never afford. She never knew that while she signed those divorce papers with pride, her husband stood calm, silent, holding the very keys to the empire she abandoned. The wedding day arrived with champagne and expensive perfumes, but something darker unfolded under the bright chandeliers. Her lover poured dirty water on the husband she left behind, mocking him before the crowd, believing him worthless, beneath them, forgotten. What she did next shattered every expectation, every lie she built her life on, revealing secrets deeper than betrayal, wealth older than blood, and love twisted into ambition. Why was she unaware he now owned her family's multi-billionaire dollar empire? Why did she marry his best friend believing he was poor? And what did she do the moment her lover poured dirty water on him that shocked her more than fate itself? She didn't look back, and maybe that was her first mistake. Celeste Hartman moved through the marble foyer of the mansion she grew up in, the same mansion her parents built brick by brick from the beginnings of their multi-billionaire dollar empire. Yet today she walked like a conqueror rather than a daughter. Her heels clicked like tiny hammers announcing victory, her perfume trailing confidence behind her, like a royal banner snapping in the wind. Outside, the estate stretched wide with imported palm trees, gold-tinted gates, fountains carved from Italian stone. Wealth so loud it nearly screamed. But the man behind her, the man she once called husband, stood quietly by the doorway like rain in a drought, unnoticed, uncelebrated, unvalued. His name was Nolan Avery. He was calm, too calm. Celeste was unaware that Nolan, her husband, had just acquired her family's empire in a silent buyout, orchestrated weeks before she filed for divorce. She didn't know he held the power to sign or break checks her ancestors bled to build. She didn't know he owned the walls she walked through, the gates she passed, the future she thought belonged to her new life. She only saw him as poor, a mechanic-clothed dreamer with gentle eyes and cheap shoes, a man she believed offered nothing but affection, loyalty, and hope. What good was love when bank vaults echoed louder? So she left. Her final morning as his wife began with cold coffee, silence thick like hospital air. Nolan stood at the dining table wearing a plain white shirt and navy work pants, a man you could walk past in a crowd and never remember. Celeste arrived dressed in a silk emerald gown, hair curled like television royalty, a divorce agreement placed beside her plate like cutlery. She didn't ask for breakfast. She asked for freedom, and Nolan, quietly, painfully, gave it. He slid the pen across the table, and for a heartbeat their hands touched. Her ring finger brushed his thumb, and something fragile trembled inside him. The ghost of vows once spoken, promises once pure. But she looked away, eyes already somewhere richer. She signed with the confidence of someone who believed tomorrow belonged only to her. She did not see the faint gold-embossed document beneath his palm, the one showing the transfer of ownership to the entire Hartman conglomerate. The ink on her divorce papers dried the same day her husband became emperor. But Celeste didn't know. She was unaware. She believed she upgraded, trading vows for diamonds. She left Nolan to marry his best friend, Roman Vale, a man with polished suits and polished lies. Roman promised her more luxury, more status, more everything Nolan supposedly couldn't give. Roman smirked when Nolan quietly congratulated them. He smirked harder when Celeste handed Nolan the wedding invitation meant as an insult, not courtesy. Nolan stood at the threshold of the home he now owned, watching Celeste step into Roman's waiting limousine. She didn't glance back. Why would she? In her mind, she was stepping upward. She believed she was the one leaving poverty to enter paradise. But Nolan already lived there. Silently, he watched the limousine disappear through gates that technically belonged to him. Only when her car vanished into the distance did Nolan allow himself a breath. Slow, steady, like a man swallowing fire to keep from burning. His eyes were not angry, not broken, not empty. They carried something deeper, a patience sharpened by betrayal. 1 week later, Celeste stood in front of a cathedral draped in white roses and tinted chandeliers. Photographers flashed. Wealthy guests whispered. Roman held her waist with confident hands, presenting her like treasure he stole from a museum. The ceremony was royal. Gold aisle runner, diamond-rimmed goblets, designer gowns shimmering like ocean light. Celeste glowed in pearl satin, her tiara formed from gemstones older than her lineage. She felt untouchable, elevated. But Nolan was there too. He stood in the back row, invited only to be humiliated. A spectacle for Roman, a trophy for Celeste's newfound pride. His suit was simple yet elegant, black with a subdued charcoal tie, a quiet ocean among waves of glitter. He clapped through their vows. Not out of pain, but knowledge. Celeste didn't notice the older CEOs bowing respectfully at Nolan as they passed. She missed the wealthy family heads shaking his hand with subtle deference. She missed the board members whispering, "That's the new owner." She missed every sign that power looked calm today. Not loud, not flashy, not Roman. She missed everything until the reception, where humiliation would sharpen destiny. Music swelled, champagne sparkled. Roman led Nolan to center stage with the grin of a man ready to publicly disgrace the one he stole from. A servant handed Roman a metal bucket. Its stench, sharp, murky, sewage-colored, dirty water. Laughter rippled through the guests, cruel and delighted. Roman lifted the bucket and poured it over Nolan's head. The hall erupted like stadium fireworks. Cameras flashed. Guests cackled. Roman wrapped his arm around Celeste triumphantly as the crowd cheered. But Celeste did not laugh. Her eyes stayed glued to Nolan, soaked, steady, unreadable. And in that split second, something inside her lungs didn't breathe. Nolan did not wipe the dirty water from his face. He did not blink. He simply breathed, slowly, like a man who knew storms broke on him only to kneel later. The chandelier light dripped across his soaked shoulders, highlighting the poised frame of a man who no longer belonged to the world beneath him. The guests expected shame, anger, collapse. Yet Nolan stood still, eyes calm, jaw firm, posture almost royal in its restraint. Roman's laughter cut through the hall like broken glass. "Look at him," Roman announced, raising his champagne glass as though crowning himself king. "She divorced that for this." Celeste felt her stomach tighten. The crowd echoed Roman's mockery, unaware of the truth so enormous it could swallow the hall whole. Her husband, the man she threw away, now owned every business logo shimmering on the reception banners. The catering company, the luxury hotel hosting the event, the vineyard supplying every bottle poured tonight, all under Hartman conglomerate, all under Nolan Avery, a truth she was still unaware of. The flashback hit like thunder. 3 months before the divorce, Celeste sat in the Hartman boardroom. Her parents red-faced, exhausted, fearful. Stocks were falling, investors withdrawing, whispers of bankruptcy staining the air. The empire built over generations was crumbling, and panic filled the room like smoke. Nolan was there, quiet at the corner seat, unseen. Uninvited by opinion, yet invited by obligation, her husband. He listened as her father, Albert Hartman, argued with shareholders. He watched Celeste twist her engagement ring anxiously. He spoke only once. "We need restructuring and a leadership buyout," he suggested gently. "There's a way to protect everything, but it must be private." The board laughed. Her mother scoffed. Celeste lowered her eyes with silent shame. Nolan, the poor husband, offering financial advice to billionaires? But he left the meeting early, not in defeat, but in beginning, because Nolan was not poor. He had inherited dormant shares from his late father, shares tied to old Hartman partnerships decades forgotten. He quietly orchestrated acquisitions behind the board's blind spots, negotiated expansions with foreign investors, and resurrected dying subsidiaries under new agreements. He worked silently in shadows, until one dawn, signatures etched destiny on gold-edged documents. Hartman conglomerate, the empire Celeste believed Roman would elevate her into, became Nolan Avery's, and nobody knew, especially not her. Back in the cathedral hall, Nolan's soaked suit clung to him like second skin, but in his eyes something burned colder than water. Truth unspoken, power untouched, dignity unstained. Roman tugged Celeste closer, soiled bucket swinging loosely at his side like a trophy of cruelty. "Say something to him, sweetheart," Roman urged, smirking. "Let him know what he missed." But Celeste's lips parted, and no words came. Her heartbeat pulsed like warning drums. The hall's lights blurred at the edges. Her eyes flickered between Roman's mocking grin and Nolan's haunting calm. And then the unexpected happened. Nolan reached into his pocket, not hurried, not trembling, confident, like a man unveiling destiny. He pulled out a folded document, gold seal, silver ribbon, the Hartman crest shining like revelation. The crowd fell into whispers. Celeste's breath stopped. Roman's grin wavered. Nolan placed the document on a nearby table, not speaking, not defending, not retaliating. Just a gesture, silent, deadly, like a sword laid gently before an enemy who believed you unarmed. Celeste's feet moved before her mind caught up. She stepped toward it, drawn like gravity, like fate calling her home. Her fingers skimmed the edge of the parchment, eyes widening with every line she read, every signature, every corporate seal. Her blood ran cold. Her husband, the man drenched before her, had just acquired her family's multi-billionaire dollar empire. He owned everything she left. Her knees weakened. Her pulse misfired. Her voice shattered into a trembling whisper only she could hear. "What have I done?" But nobody else heard it, only the guilt that echoed inside her ribcage. Roman grabbed her wrist, voice sharp. "Ignore that. He's nothing." Nothing? He was everything. And she divorced him for the man now clenching her arm. The lover who would soon betray her beyond recovery, because humiliation was only the first drop of water in a flood. Nolan turned slowly, leaving the hall with quiet poise, footsteps echoing like countdowns to disaster. He did not acknowledge Celeste. He did not look back. He did not need to. Silence settled over the hall long after Nolan walked away, but silence can be loud, painfully loud. Celeste's heartbeat felt heavier than the orchestra music still playing in the background. Her gown suddenly weighed like wet cement on her skin. She could barely breathe, barely blink, barely justify the man she chose standing beside her. Roman snapped his fingers for the band to play louder, forcing celebration down the throats of guests who now carried confusion instead of joy. He wanted laughter to bury the moment, to bury Nolan, to bury the truth Celeste had read in that document. But truth never stays buried. Celeste stepped back, slowly removing Roman's hand from her arm. Her eyes followed the droplets of dirty water still scattered across the marble floor. Proof of Nolan's humiliation, proof of Roman's cruelty, proof of her mistake. Every drop was a memory she could never erase. Roman moved closer, impatience bleeding through his perfect suit. "What's wrong with you?" he hissed quietly, smile still painted for the crowd. "You're my wife now. Stop staring at him like you regret it." Regret. The word tasted like metal. She swallowed it, but it scratched all the way down. She remembered nights Nolan stayed late fixing broken pipes in their small apartment while she slept under blankets he bought with his last paycheck. She remembered his hands stained with oil, cooking her breakfast after 12-hour shifts. She remembered him promising that their future would bloom, not because of money, but because of them. She abandoned that man for Roman's polished promises. Roman clinked his glass against hers, forcing a smile into her cheek. "Smile. You're Mrs. Vale now, the wife of a future king." Future king? Yet the man he humiliated was the king already. Celeste's voice trembled, barely more than breath. What if he wasn't what we thought? Roman paused on only for a second, but the crack appeared. "What does that mean?" His eyes sharpened, mask slipping just enough for her to see the darker bones beneath. Celeste clenched her fingers, remembering the golden sealed document, the empire transfer, the truth she didn't want to believe. She saw the engraved signatures. Nolan Avery written above every board member, every company branch, every property her family once owned. Roman leaned closer, voice low enough to burn. Nolan is nothing, and if he were something, he wouldn't have stood there like a dog. Not a dog, a lion watching mice. Celeste stepped away again, this time with intention. Her heels echoed across the marble floor as she walked out of the hall, ignoring Roman's calls, ignoring the staring guests, ignoring the chaos heat rising behind her. She followed the wet footprints Nolan left behind. Outside, the night was colder than she expected. Nolan stood beneath the grand staircase of the hotel entrance, rain starting to fall, streetlights softening the edges of his silhouette. The dirty water had washed away into something more symbolic. A man reborn from humiliation into steel. Celeste approached slowly, but before she could speak, another memory flashed sharp and sudden. The night she told Nolan she wanted more than he could give. He didn't argue, didn't fight, didn't beg. He simply asked, "Are you leaving me for wealth or for another man?" She lied. She said neither. Yet here she was, married to Roman, the best friend who watched Nolan build dreams only to steal the space meant to share them. Back in the rain, Celeste stood 2 steps behind Nolan. He didn't turn. He didn't acknowledge her. He waited for nothing. He owed her nothing. Still, she found herself speaking, voice crumbling like old money. "Why didn't you tell me?" His reply was soft, like frost cutting skin. "You didn't stay long enough to know." She felt her heart fracture. Not break. Fracture. Breaking is loud. Fracturing is quiet, dangerous, invisible until collapse. Nolan walked past her, shoulder brushing hers lightly. No bitterness, no hate, only the weight of a man who learned love the hard way. Celeste watched him disappear into a black sedan, rain streaking the windows like tears she refused to shed. For the first time in her life, wealth didn't make her feel full. It made her hollow. The empire belonged to Nolan now. The marriage belonged to Roman. And she stood between both worlds with nothing but her choices strangling her breath. Inside the hall, Roman toasted louder, laughing with teeth like knives. Celeste wiped rain from her cheek, though she wasn't sure if it was rain at all. The night didn't end. It simply opened another door. Celeste returned to the hall drenched in rain and realization, her pulse a thunderstorm beneath her skin. The music still played. Too cheerful, too bright, too wrong. Roman stood at the center of the room surrounded by guests who pretended not to notice the tension carving through the air like lightning across open sky. He raised his glass again, voice grand and careless. "To new beginnings!" The crowd echoed him, but their eyes flicked toward Celeste with questions they were too polite or too afraid to ask. Someone whispered. Another stared too long. A ripple of discomfort passed through the hall like wind-disturbing curtains. Roman extended a hand to her, smiling like a politician photographed beside a scandal. "Come," he said, soft but sharp. "We have guests to greet." She stepped toward him, slowly, her wedding dress brushing the floor like regret dragging marble. Roman leaned close, breath warm and laced with superiority. "You walked out like you forgot who you're married to," he whispered. "Nolan doesn't matter anymore. I do." Celeste held his gaze. For the first time, Roman's charm felt thin. His confidence felt painted. His words felt cheap. "What if you don't know who he is anymore?" she asked. Roman's smile froze. "Only a fraction, but enough." "What did you find out?" His tone dropped, losing sweetness like fruit left too long in sun. Celeste studied him, really studied him, and saw what she once ignored. The way he gripped her waist too hard when cameras were out. The way he measured rooms, not by beauty, but by usefulness. The way he watched Nolan, not with guilt, but with hunger. A best friend doesn't pour dirty water over a man he loves. A best friend doesn't steal a wife. A best friend doesn't smile like ownership is a triumph. Roman wasn't a best friend. He was a man who desired the throne Nolan didn't flaunt. Celeste's voice was low, steady. "I saw documents. Nolan owns the empire." Roman's jaw tightened. Quick, dangerous. "Impossible. It's real," she breathed. "His signature is—" Roman cut her off, smile returning, but hollow. "Then he'll lose it. We'll make sure of that." We, not she, not Nolan, Roman. He spoke like a man planning war. Celeste's stomach twisted, not from fear of Nolan's power, but from the realization that Roman didn't love her. He loved what she represented: access, proximity, elevation. He thought she was a ladder, and ladders break when weight shifts. Roman took her hand, motioning for dancers to clear the floor. The DJ dimmed the lights, spotlight falling on them like a stage fairy tale, except the edges of the scene were rotting. He pressed his lips to her ear. "If Nolan thinks buying the empire wins him anything," Roman murmured, "he's wrong. The board still listens to me. Investors trust me." He cleaned cars while I sat at the table. Celeste's chest tightened. Nolan cleaned cars to survive. Roman cleaned connections to conquer. Different dirt, one honorable, one filthy. Roman guided her into a slow dance, but it felt like a trap disguised as rhythm. His hand rested on her waist with possession, not affection. Guests smiled politely, hiding discomfort behind champagne bubbles. Under chandelier glow, Celeste spoke again, a quiet blade. "Did you ever love him, even as a friend?" Roman chuckled, cold, dismissive. "Love? Friendship? Those are words poor men cling to because they have nothing else to hold." Her breath caught. There, the truth, raw, undeniable. Roman never envied her wealth. He envied Nolan's goodness. The one thing money couldn't counterfeit. He leaned in, whispering victory like venom. "You married an empire tonight, not a man." She felt the room tilt. Roman wasn't her future. He was her prison wrapped in silk. Her eyes drifted again to the entrance Nolan walked through earlier. Empty now, but heavy with meaning. Nolan didn't need to defend himself. His existence was the defense. His rise was the answer. His dignity was the roar beneath quiet water. Celeste blinked, voice cracking open like thunder. He deserved better than us. The music continued, yet the moment froze. Roman's hand tightened. Bruising pressure, possessive warning. "Be careful, wife," he said through a clenched smile. "You're thinking too loudly." She held his stare. For the first time, Celeste was not the blind one. For the first time, she saw the empire from both sides. Power earned and power stolen. For the first time, she realized losing Nolan was losing more than wealth. It was losing her anchor, her compass, her grace. The dance ended. Applause rose, but nothing inside Celeste applauded. She stepped away, and Roman let go too slowly. Tonight was far from over. The truth had only begun to unfold. Celeste slipped away from the dance floor, her pulse a storm she could no longer contain. The wedding hall glimmered with wealth and celebration, yet every glittering surface felt like a mirror reflecting her worst mistake. She moved through crowds of guests congratulating themselves for simply being present. Faces brushed in makeup, dripping in diamonds, speaking wealth but breathing emptiness. She didn't belong here, not anymore. Outside, rain pounded the pavement like 1,000 restless truths. She stepped beneath the grand archway, satin hem dragging through puddles, tiara catching droplets like shattered stars. Her makeup streaked, not from vanity ruined, but from realization blooming painfully slow. She wanted to speak to Nolan, not for forgiveness. She didn't deserve that yet, but for understanding, for closure, for clarity. Lightning ripped across the sky, bright enough to illuminate a black sedan waiting under the portico. The same car Nolan left in moments earlier. She rushed toward it, clutching her gown, breath ragged. The window rolled down. Nolan's eyes found hers through rain. He didn't look angry. He looked finished. Something inside Celeste broke cleanly. "Nolan," she exhaled, voice thin as twilight. He said nothing. Silence spoke louder. She stepped closer, rain soaking her veil to her skin. "I didn't know. I swear to you. I didn't know who you really were." "Because you never asked," he murmured. Her chest hollowed. She remembered their first apartment. Walls smelling of paint, floors bare except for one mattress. Nolan held her while wind hissed through cracked windows. She told him she'd stay even if wealth never came. But when the world demanded gold, she demanded it from him. And when he couldn't give it fast enough, she walked away. Not because he failed, but because she did. Nolan, she whispered again, softer. Why didn't you tell me you acquired the empire? He looked at her, really looked, as if seeing both the bride she became and the woman she once was. His answer was a wound stitched in truth. Because I wanted you to love me without it. Her breath shattered. He opened the door, stepping out into rain. Not caring how it soaked his tailored suit, he stood inches from her, closer than guilt could stand without trembling. Did you ever love me? She asked, voice shaking like windows in wind. Or was I just another piece of the empire for you to prove wrong? Nolan's answer was a knife wrapped in velvet. I loved you more than the empire, but you chose the empire over me. Her heart broke for the second time, and this time she felt it. A figure appeared behind them. Roman, eyes sharp as silver traps, watching his bride in rain with another man. Jealousy, not love, dripped from his presence. How touching, Roman said, voice slicing calm, reminiscing in the rain. Should I leave you two to your tragic poetry? Celeste stiffened. Nolan turned slowly, not intimidated, not impressed. Roman stepped closer, placing a possessive hand on Celeste's shoulder. She's my wife now. You're done, Nolan. The empire means nothing without influence, and I have that. Nolan met his gaze unshaken. You have noise. I have power. Roman laughed, brittle, desperate. You think a signature makes you king? Nolan stepped forward, rain cascading like armor. No, but character does. Roman's jaw flexed, teeth grinding behind a forced smile. He looked like a man losing control, not of his wife, but of his illusion. Celeste watched them. Old love versus new poison. Two men who once called each other brother, now standing like kings preparing for war. The man who valued loyalty, drenched in rain. The man who valued pride, dry under golden lights. She chose wrong. Roman tugged her back toward the hall, grip like chain. Come inside. You're embarrassing us. She didn't move. His grip tightened. Celeste. She looked at Nolan, rain beating on his brow like diamonds, eyes steady with the kind of strength wealth can't counterfeit. Then she spoke, quietly, clearly. I'm not going back in with you. Roman's hand froze. Nolan inhaled. Slow, controlled. Roman's voice cracked like old glass. You think you can crawl back to him? After everything, he'll never take you back. Celeste didn't answer. She wasn't thinking of crawling. She was thinking of truth. I need to fix what I broke, she whispered. Roman stepped back, disbelief flooding him. You would choose a mechanic over a king, Nolan answered for her. She's choosing a man over a mask. The rain intensified, as if the sky wanted witness. Roman's composure snapped. He spat at Celeste. Not water, not wine, but the same contempt he used to break Nolan. His saliva slid down her cheek like poison she finally felt. She didn't wipe it away, but something inside her turned to fire. She walked past Roman, leaving him staring, teeth bared with humiliation. Exactly how he once wanted Nolan to stand. Except Nolan never bent. Roman was bending now. Celeste stopped in front of Nolan, not touching him, not begging, not expecting, just present. I don't deserve forgiveness, she said. I only want the chance to earn it. Nolan looked at her the way a storm looks at land, with power, with restraint, with unforgettable memory. He stepped aside, not rejecting her, not embracing her, letting her walk beside him, not behind him. She followed. Roman stood outside the hall alone, dripping in luxury but starved of loyalty. Applause gone stale, celebration turned sour in his mouth. He screamed her name into rain, but she didn't turn back. She had finally learned who the real king was. Morning broke like judgment across the city. Sharp, clean, merciless. Newspapers hit driveways, headlines printing what last night whispered. Hartman Empire under new ownership. The silent buyout, who is Nolan Avery? Photographs showed Nolan leaving the wedding reception, drenched yet composed. The kind of image that makes the world stop and recalibrate its heroes. Cameras caught Celeste behind him, veil soaked, eyes wide. Not glamorous, but human. Not victorious, but awakening. Roman's name appeared in smaller font, an afterthought rather than a headline. Celeste stood in Nolan's penthouse suite that morning, wrapped in a robe he offered. She hadn't slept. Her tiara lay abandoned on a table like a crown she no longer felt worthy to wear. Nolan entered the room, coffee in hand, documents under one arm. He didn't ask if she slept. He didn't ask how she felt. He didn't ask why she stayed. He simply said, "There's a board meeting in 2 hours." She nodded quietly. She wasn't his wife anymore. She wasn't his enemy. She wasn't his possession. She was a witness to her own undoing, and maybe eventually her own rebuilding. Nolan placed a folder in front of her. Inside, financial trails, shareholder shifts, takeover signatures, all dated weeks before the divorce. Every line proving one thing. He never needed her family's empire. He saved it, even when it wouldn't save him. Celeste closed the file with trembling fingers. "Why did you protect everything even after I left?" Nolan poured coffee without looking up. "Because I married a future, not a fortune." Her throat tightened. She remembered telling herself love without wealth would starve. Yet she discovered wealth without love starved deeper. Lightning noon sunlight spilled across her face, illuminating regret, illuminating growth. At 9:01 a.m., the boardroom doors opened. Executives sat stiff like carved oak. Familiar faces that once dismissed Nolan as background furniture now watched him with sharpened respect. Roman arrived fashionably late, swagger brittle beneath polished shoes, tie knotted too tight like guilt. He didn't expect to see Celeste seated beside Nolan. Not touching, not claiming, simply present like truth standing upright. Roman smirked, masking panic with arrogance. "So this is your show now?" Nolan slid a document across the table. "Not a show, a transition." The board leaned forward. Roman scoffed. "You think you can run the empire alone?" Nolan met his eyes. Calm, grounded, lethal. "I won't run it alone." Heads turned. Nolan stood, unbuttoning his suit jacket, voice clear enough to cut glass. "I want Celeste to return as Chief Operations Director." Silence collapsed the room like a cathedral losing air. Celeste inhaled sharply, not from excitement, but disbelief. She opened her mouth, but Nolan raised a hand, not silencing her, grounding her. "This is not about marriage," he said. "This is about legacy. She grew up in this empire. She understands its bones. She knows where it breathes and where it breaks." Roman slammed a fist on the table. "Over my dead influence will she get power back?" Nolan didn't blink. "You don't have influence. Not anymore." He clicked a remote. Screens lit up with financial evidence Roman hoped stayed buried. Embezzlement trails, misused funds, lavish spending disguised as company expansion. Gasps broke like thunder. Roman staggered backward. Celeste's hand covered her lips. She once believed Roman was wealth refined, yet he was wealth corrupted. Board members whispered frantically. Roman pointed wildly at Celeste. "You planned this with him behind my back." Celeste shook her head, slow, aching. "No, I fell for you because I didn't see the truth. I'm not blind anymore." Roman reached for her, desperate, grasping, shaking. "You were mine." She stepped away, firm, final. "I was never yours. I was borrowed confidence for your hollow throne." Security entered. Roman's rage cracked into fragments of defeat. Thrown out of the empire like a man evicted from a castle he only decorated but never owned. His shouts echoed down hallways, no longer willing to hear him. Celeste stood frozen, heart thunder heavy. Nolan took his seat at the head of the table. He didn't look triumphant. He looked steady, the way mountains do after storms. He turned to her, eyes neither warm nor cold, but open. "Do you accept the position?" Celeste inhaled, deeply, painfully, honestly. "Yes, not for power, not for glory, but for redemption earned, not requested." The board approved unanimously. Nolan nodded once. Respect without sentiment. The meeting ended. Celeste followed him into the corridor. Steps slower, breath steadier. They didn't speak. Rain hammered the windows. Cleaner now, less violent. Celeste didn't reach for Nolan's hand. She walked beside him. Equal distance, equal silence. Redemption had begun, but forgiveness was still a horizon neither could touch yet. And some horizons take time to walk toward. The sun dipped below the skyline, leaving the city washed in amber and apology. The boardroom war was over, but battles of the heart rarely ended with votes or signatures. Nolan walked ahead of Celeste through the company lobby. Quiet, composed, unbreakable. Employees bowed subtly as he passed, whispering respect that once would have seemed unimaginable. Celeste followed with measured steps, not hiding behind him, not racing ahead. She walked like someone relearning the shape of humility. Every click of her heel was a reminder of pride shed like skin. Outside, black cars waited like obedient wolves. Nolan's chauffeur opened his door, but Celeste gently touched the sleek metal, stopping him. "I'd like to ride with Nolan," she said, voice even, controlled. Nolan paused. The driver stepped back. Rain clouds gathered, but for once the sky did not look threatening, only reflective. She entered the back seat first. Nolan slid in beside her, two bodies sharing silence like a fragile bridge. The door shut. Soft, final. The city moved around them, neon lights blinking like sleepless conscience. Celeste kept her hands folded, afraid to stain the moment with eagerness or regret. "You didn't have to choose me," she said. "Not in that meeting." Nolan watched the city blur through the window before answering. "I didn't choose you. I chose the empire. I chose what's right for it." The honesty stung, but truth was antidote before it was cure. She nodded, accepting, not wounded. "I want to be worthy of that decision," she said quietly. The car slowed to a red light, thin rain beginning to fall again. Nolan finally turned to her. "You don't earn redemption by asking for it. You earn it by living it." His voice had no bitterness, no softness, only clarity. Her pulse steadied. "Then let me live it." He gave no promise, no reassurance, only silence that allowed possibility. The car moved again. Back at Nolan's penthouse, Celeste stood at the balcony overlooking the city. Now no longer her father's empire, but Nolan's. She wrapped her arms around herself, not for warmth, but for grounding. Below, traffic glimmered like moving constellations. Footsteps approached. Nolan handed her a cup of tea. Not as a husband, not as a lover, but as a man offering peace. She accepted it, fingers brushing his. Sparks didn't ignite. Not yet. This moment wasn't passion. It was rebuilding. "Do you remember the first thing you told me when we had nothing?" Nolan asked. Celeste nodded slowly, eyes blurring with memory. "I said we would grow together, even if it took years." "You stopped believing in that," Nolan replied. She looked down at the cup. "I stopped believing in myself." Rain tapped the balcony railing. Soft rhythm, steady reminder. Nolan didn't reach for her. He didn't move closer. He stood beside her. Equal distance. He had learned how easily closeness could be taken for granted. She had learned how quickly distance could break a life. Celeste breathed. "I want to make choices that honor who you were, not just who you are now." Nolan considered her with unreadable calm. "Time will tell. Not forgiveness, not rejection." A door slightly open. Only time could push it further. A phone buzzed on the table. Notification flashing urgent red. Celeste glanced at the screen. Roman had made his move. A leaked interview. Headlines forming like weapons. Nolan Avery stole the Hartman Empire. The truth behind the silent betrayal Celeste used as a pawn. Marriage for access? Celeste's heart slammed into her ribs. Roman wasn't defeated. He was cornered, and desperate animals bite deepest. She looked at Nolan, his jaw tightened, steel beneath skin. "He's starting a war," Nolan said quietly. Celeste stepped closer, voice resolute. No falter, no plea. "Then I stand with you this time." For the first time since the divorce, Nolan looked at her, not past her, not with anger, not with distance, but with recognition. She wasn't the same woman who walked away. This time, she walked toward something. Rain fell harder. Screens across the city lit with controversy. The empire trembled as old wounds resurfaced with teeth. And two former lovers, once torn apart, now prepared to face the storm side by side. By sunrise, Roman's interview had spread like wildfire. Social feeds flooded with outrage, confusion, fascination. Some viewers praised him as a betrayed friend fighting injustice. Others questioned why a man so confident poured dirty water on someone he claimed to respect. But most simply waited for the spectacle to turn bloody, because people always hunger for war more than peace. Inside Nolan's office, high above the city like a throne carved from sky, screens glowed with headlines that tried to twist truth into spectacle. Celeste stood beside him, reviewing damage reports, drafting statements, dismantling lies one fact at a time. She wasn't shaking now. She wasn't hiding behind guilt. She was strategizing. Sharp, alert, present. Nolan watched her work, quietly, unexpectedly impressed. "You always had this in you," he said without turning from the screen. "You just needed to choose who you were fighting for." She didn't smile, didn't soften, only answered, "I choose this company. I choose accountability. I choose truth." He heard the unspoken and maybe one day I choose you. But he didn't ask for it. Not yet. An assistant burst into the room, breathless, shaken. "There's someone downstairs demanding to speak with you both." Nolan's gaze sharpened. Before anyone could question further, footsteps echoed through the marble corridor, heavy, unrestrained, approaching like thunder, uninterested in doors or permission. Roman Vale walked in, security at his heels, but he waved them off like swatting flies. No suit, no polished arrogance, just raw anger wearing the remains of ambition. His eyes locked onto Celeste first. Hunger, desperation, disbelief tangled together like venomous rope. "You stand by him now?" he snarled. "After everything? After what he did to you? After he stole what your family bled for?" Celeste stood taller. "He didn't steal it," she said firmly. "He saved it. And we both know it." Roman laughed, a sound too broken to be joy, too loud to be sane. "Saved it? He ripped it from underneath us. I built connections. I brought investors. I deserved the empire. Not you, not him, not anyone born with more than I fought for." Nolan rose from his chair, slow, powerful, unflinching. "You deserved nothing you tried to take through lies." Roman's anger cracked like bone. "You think you're king because you bought signatures? You think she'll worship you again like she used to?" Nolan stepped forward, one pace, controlled and lethal. "I don't need worship. I need integrity." Roman's jaw twitched, realization creeping like rot into ego. This wasn't about Celeste anymore. It never really was. Roman didn't want her. He wanted what having her represented: access, legacy. A shortcut to a crown he never earned. Celeste saw it now, clearly, painfully. Nolan spoke again, quieter, sharper. "If you wanted power, you could have worked for it. Instead, you tried to inherit it through betrayal." Roman lunged, desk shaking, papers scattering like startled birds. Security moved, but Nolan raised a hand, stopping them. Roman's fist hovered inches from Nolan's jaw. Nolan didn't flinch. Celeste did, but remained rooted, and Roman saw the truth. Nolan was stronger without violence. Roman was weaker with it. His hand trembled, not with rage, but with defeat. He couldn't break a man built from patience. He dropped his arm, eyes glassy, pride leaking out like oil. "I could have been you," he whispered. Nolan answered without cruelty. "You could have been better." Roman swallowed, nothing left to fight with except regret. He stepped back, once, twice, then turned, leaving without ceremony, without dignity, without empire. No applause followed, no cameras waited. Silence escorted him out. When the door closed, Celeste exhaled, slow, deliberate. Nolan looked at her, meeting her eyes without armor this time. You didn't defend him, he said softly. She met his gaze steady. I finally see who he was and who you are. Rain streaked down the window behind him. Slow, cleansing, final. No thunder, not yet, but storms rarely end in 1 hour, and some hearts must rebuild through rainfall, not lightning. Not with chaos, but with rebuilding. The empire stabilized beneath Nolan's leadership. Stock recovered with surprising speed, and investors returned like birds sensing the end of winter. Celeste arrived early to the office daily, left late, absorbed responsibilities with precision and humility. Not to impress Nolan, but to become someone capable of facing her past without flinching. Every boardroom meeting she led was a quiet apology. Every decision she made was a step toward redemption. Every success the company achieved was proof she was no longer the woman who left for glittering emptiness. But forgiveness is a slow language. Nolan spoke it sparingly. He watched her, studied her, measured change not through words but through constancy. She didn't ask him for love. She didn't try to reclaim what she once destroyed. She simply became someone worth remembering. Not for beauty, but for character. One night, long after workers left and the skyline hummed like a heart half asleep, Celeste stood alone in the executive office, reviewing files, adjusting projections, pushing through exhaustion like penance. She didn't hear Nolan enter until his shadow stretched across her paperwork. You haven't taken a day off since you started. She didn't look up. If redemption was easy, it wouldn't be real, she murmured. He stepped closer, slowly, like someone approaching a wound he wasn't sure was healed. You're allowed to rest. She set her pen down, finally facing him. Their eyes met, not like lovers who burned out, but like two people approaching possibility carefully, as if it might shatter if handled too quickly. I rested when I didn't deserve to, she said, when you carried everything alone. Nolan's jaw tightened, not with anger, but memory. She continued, voice steady with truth instead of guilt. I walked away because I feared struggle. I didn't realize love is built through it, not around it. He said nothing, but silence softened. She stepped toward him, just close enough to feel warmth but not claim it. I'm not asking you to take me back, she whispered, only to see who I am now, not who I was then. He studied her, eyes deep, unreadable. Lightning flashed outside, not violent, just illuminating. Then Nolan did something she hadn't expected. He offered his hand. Not pull, not possession, invitation. She stared at it, breath trembling, then placed her hand in his. It fit without force, without desperation, without assumption. For the first time, touch didn't ask for forgiveness or romance. It simply acknowledged growth. You've changed, he said quietly. Because losing you changed me, she replied. He didn't smile. He didn't step away. He only held her hand, steady, real. Outside, the city glowed like redemption, learning to breathe, slow but certain. Celeste felt the moment settle into her bones, gentle as dawn, patient as oceans, deep as mistakes transformed. Not reconciliation, not romance reborn, but the beginning of something harder, stronger, truer. Two people learning to rebuild a bridge only when both are willing to walk to the middle. And tonight, they took one step each. Spring arrived like forgiveness, not loud, but living. The empire flourished under shared leadership, each decision a testament to how far Celeste and Nolan had come. She no longer sought his approval, she earned it. He no longer held her at a distance. He allowed her to stand beside him. They became partners, in work, in responsibility, in steady rebuilding. But some distances linger, not because love is gone, but because hearts remember where they broke. One late evening, after another long day of negotiations, Celeste entered Nolan's penthouse. Not as a guest, not as a woman begging history to rewind, but as someone who had proven she could be trusted with silence and space. She found him on the balcony, city lights reflecting across his face like constellations mapping old scars. He didn't turn, but she sensed he knew she was there. The wind carried her voice softly. Today would have been our anniversary. He exhaled, slow as memory, deep as truth. She continued, more steady than trembling. I don't want to erase what happened. I just want to build something better from it. Nolan finally turned, eyes calm, not guarded. What do you want, Celeste? Truly. Not as a test, as an opening. She stepped closer. Not rushing, not assuming. I want partnership, not possession. I want growth, not comfort. I want to walk with you, not ahead of you, not behind you. Her voice softened. And if love returns, I want it to return because we earned it, not because we miss what we lost. Silence settled gently, soft, warm, like dusk accepting night. Nolan's features eased, not melting, not surrendering, simply releasing the weight of yesterday bit by bit. He moved toward her, close enough for breath to meet breath, but not touching. Presence speaking louder than proximity. I never stopped loving you, he said. Not dramatic, not desperate, simply true. But love without trust is a house without doors. You can live in it, but you can't enter or leave freely. Celeste's eyes shimmered, not with sorrow but gratitude. Then let's rebuild with doors, she whispered. Not a plea, a promise. Nolan lifted her hand, not to claim her, but to acknowledge the woman she became. No wedding ring, no kiss. Not yet. Instead, he held her hand against his chest. Heartbeat firm beneath her palm, steady like foundations reinforced after storms. You've earned your place beside me, he said. And this time the distance between them didn't hurt. It healing. They stood beneath a sky stitched with stars, neither rushing the future nor clinging to the past. The empire no longer divided them. It reflected them, broken, rebuilt, stronger where it once cracked. Celeste leaned her head gently against his shoulder. Nolan wrapped his arms slowly around hers, not lovers, not strangers, two hearts relearning each other with patience, with dignity, with earned tenderness. And for the first time since everything shattered, the night felt like a beginning, not an aftermath. The next months unfolded not with fireworks, but with gentle heat. Celeste and Nolan rebuilt slowly, not rushing, not forcing, letting connection grow at its own pace like spring pushing through winter ground. Meetings turned into shared coffee breaks. Strategy sessions turned into late-night conversations. Silence between them no longer felt like walls. It felt like understanding. Nolan still carried distance in his eyes, the kind that comes from wounds not fully closed, but when Celeste spoke, he listened. When she struggled, he guided without belittling. When she succeeded, she never boasted. She thanked him. One evening, the office was empty except for two lights glowing like twin beacons against the glass skyline. Celeste stood at the window, reviewing merger proposals. Nolan approached with 2 glasses of red wine. Not ceremony, just presence. You've grown into the role, he said, handing her a glass. She accepted, gaze steady. I just needed to grow into myself first. They drank in comfortable quiet, the city shimmering below like a second sky. Celeste glanced at him, not craving approval, but connection. You know, she said softly, I thought power was loud, but you led this empire without shouting once. Nolan set his glass down. Power that needs volume is weak. Strength is quiet. It stands without announcing itself. She smiled, but small, sincere. You taught me that. He looked at her, really looked, eyes no longer guarded but curious. Who are you now, Celeste? She inhaled, not to gather speech, to gather truth. I'm a woman who left gold for glitter and learned the difference too late. A woman who broke what she loved and learned to rebuild instead of beg. A woman who doesn't want to be worshipped or rescued, just met. Nolan's eyes softened, something bright flickering behind calm. And what do you want to meet now? She spoke slowly, afraid of rushing the fragile beauty of the moment. If love returns, I want us to choose it, not fall into it blind. He stepped closer, close enough that space felt warm instead of empty. Then let's choose slowly, he murmured. And for the first time since the divorce, Nolan leaned in and pressed his forehead gently to hers. Not a kiss, but a beginning. A promise, not passion. fire sleeping beneath ash. Celeste closed her eyes, breathing him in like truth she fought to earn. But beginnings rarely last without challenges, and challenges rarely come softly. Because across the city, in a dim apartment littered with newspaper clippings and broken pride, Roman Vale stared at headlines showing Nolan and Celeste side by side. Stronger than ever, he smashed a glass against the wall, voice a growl of humiliation and rage. "You think this is over? You think you won?" He lifted a USB drive. Data stolen months earlier. Leverage he never dared use. Until now. "This empire will burn before I watch you love each other again." Night draped the city like velvet soaked in tension. Nolan and Celeste worked late in the boardroom, the quiet hum of air vents the only sound between their shared focus. Documents lay open, projections glowed across a large screen. Everything about the empire felt stable, maybe for the first time since its collapse. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, dark. Emergency power kicked in, screens rebooting. But the main server showed an alert they'd never seen. Unauthorized system breach. Data extraction detected. Celeste's heart clenched. Nolan's jaw hardened. He moved to his desk, fast, controlled. His fingers flew over command keys. Within seconds, a face appeared on the central monitor. Roman, smirking, smug. Broken enough to destroy, whole enough to aim well. "Well, well," he drawled. "The king and queen of the empire reunited. How poetic." His eyes glittered with venom. How fragile. Nolan didn't react emotionally. His calm was a blade. "What do you want, Roman?" Roman leaned closer to the camera, shadows slicing his features cruel. "I want everything I lost. The company, the respect, the legacy. And if I can't have it..." He lifted the USB slowly, like a guillotine rope. "I'll burn it instead." Nolan's voice remained steady. "You don't have the power to destroy what you couldn't build." "Oh, but I do," Roman hissed, grin widening. "You think I left with nothing? You forget who managed your digital security before you took the throne." He clicked something off screen. Alarms screamed across the building. Server wipe initiated. 35% complete. Celeste's blood iced. All financial history. All mergers. All contracts. All structural backbone data. Gone. In minutes. Nolan typed rapid commands, but Roman anticipated every defense. "Stop this," Celeste demanded, stepping forward. "This won't bring you closure, just ruin." Roman laughed, a sound made of madness and bruised pride. "I don't want closure. I want collapse." Progress. 60%. Nolan's voice sharpened. Not raised, not shaken. "You're destroying your own future." Roman snapped, finally honest beneath ego. "I destroyed my future the day she walked down the aisle toward me. Still loving you." His voice cracked around truth he never accepted. "This empire never belonged to me, not even when she wore my ring." Celeste inhaled sharply, realization slicing deeper than betrayal itself. He didn't want the company. He wanted Nolan's place in her heart, and he never had it. Nolan stepped closer to the camera, eyes sharp as thunder. "You're not fighting me, Roman. You're fighting a man who didn't hate you when he should have. A friend you betrayed." Roman's face twisted, guilt fighting pride and losing. Progress. 82%. Seconds left. Nolan turned to Celeste, urgently, quietly. "Look at me." She met his gaze. No fear, only trust. He handed her control, not as woman he loved, as partner he believed in. "You know this empire like blood," he said. "Protect it." She nodded, lightning in her pulse, steel in her breath. She typed faster than panic could think, accessing backup encryption paths, rerouting memory mirrors, overriding Roman's breach with codes only someone raised in this empire would know. Roman's eyes widened. "No! No! Celeste, don't!" Progress freezes at 97%. Celeste slammed a final command. System lock reinstated. Data restoration, 100% breach terminated. Roman stared, disbelief hollowing him. "You saved it." Nolan stepped beside her, close enough to feel her breath. "She did." Roman laughed, a sound more broken than angry. "You win. Both of you. He ended the call. No dramatics, no final threat, just silence. Celeste collapsed into the nearest chair, breathing hard, shaking from adrenaline. Nolan knelt beside her, steady hands on her shoulders. You saved the entire empire. No, she whispered through trembling breath. We saved it. Together. He nodded, small, sincere. This time he didn't look at her like a woman seeking redemption. He looked at her like a woman who earned it. And then, softly, deliberately, he cupped her face, wiping a tear she didn't realize had fallen. Not for pain, for healing, for return. He leaned forward, slow enough to stop if she flinched. She didn't. Their lips met, not desperately, not hungrily, but with the gentle certainty of love, rebuilt brick by brick, not rushed, not stolen. A kiss soft as dawn, steady as growth, earned as truth. The empire stood. They stood stronger. Together. Morning poured gold through the floor-to-ceiling windows, warm and clean like forgiveness. Nolan woke first, not to tension, not to distance, but to the sound of quiet breathing just beside him. Celeste lay with her head resting lightly on his chest, one hand holding his, as though afraid to let go, even in sleep. For years she chased what glittered. For months she rebuilt what she shattered. And now she held what she finally understood had always been priceless. Nolan brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. Slow, cautious, reverent. Her eyes fluttered open, soft, warm. Real, not entitled love, earned love. Good morning, she whispered, voice still half dream. Nolan smiled, small but unmistakably genuine. Good morning. No tension, no bitterness, just presence, something they once lost and had finally learned how to hold. Celeste sat up, sheets falling around her like silk rain. I don't want us to rush, she said gently. I want us to grow. Every day, intentionally. I want a future that doesn't depend on wealth or pride, but on who we are when no one is watching. Nolan rose to meet her gaze, steady, certain. We'll build it slow, he replied. No castles made of fear, no love borrowed from insecurity. She inhaled and smiled, not with lips only, but with her entire being. A knock sounded at the penthouse door. Nolan slipped on a shirt, Celeste wrapped herself in a robe, and together they opened the door. A courier stood waiting, envelope in hand, sealed in black wax. Nolan accepted it, broke it open, read. Celeste watched his expression shift. Not fear, not shock, but a calm acceptance. He handed her the paper. Roman Vale had submitted himself to rehab, not as punishment, but as surrender, therapy, isolation, recovery. A handwritten note attached. I lost myself trying to be powerful. You two found power by becoming better. Don't waste what I tried to steal. Roman, Celeste's chest tightened, but not with anger, with closure. Nolan placed the note down. No more wars, he said. No more wounds, she answered. They sat together, side by side, watching morning bloom across the sky, light painting the empire they now protected as equals. Not because they were perfect, because they were willing. Celeste rested her head on Nolan's shoulder, fingers finding his again with no hesitation. He didn't pull away. Where once there was betrayal, there was rebuilding. Where once there was humiliation, there was healing. Where once there was divorce, there was a new beginning. Chosen, not inherited. Their love did not return as fire, it returned as dawn. Slow, soft, unstoppable, and this time, they walked into it together. Time passed, not fast, not slow, but with purpose. 3 more months of healing, 3 more months of growth, 3 more months of choosing each other with intention rather than emotion alone. Nolan and Celeste no longer lived like 2 people trying to piece together a fractured past. They lived like 2 hearts building a future hand by hand, day by day, step by step. Their love returned not as a spark, but as a fire built patiently, layered with tinder, fed with trust, sheltered by understanding. Until one evening, Nolan asked her to meet him at the old mansion, the Hartman estate she once left behind. She arrived expecting discussion, business, maybe even nostalgia. But instead, she found Nolan standing beneath the grand archway, lights soft, garden blooming around him. He wore no crown of wealth, no aura of ego, just a quiet man dressed in charcoal, heart open and unguarded for the first time in years. Celeste stepped forward slowly, breath trembling like a heart learning new rhythm. "What is this?" she asked softly. Nolan held her gaze, clear, steady, forgiving. "I haven't asked you for anything," he said. "No expectations, no demands, only time." He stepped closer. "And now that time has passed, I realize I don't want distance anymore." She felt tears gather, not of regret, but of gratitude. He continued, "You loved me once. You left. You chose wrong. But then, you chose right. You rebuilt instead of begging. You changed instead of performing." Nolan reached into his coat, not for papers, not for power, but for a simple velvet box. Celeste's breath hitched. Not a diamond meant to flaunt wealth, not a ring designed to replace the old story with glitter. A band of white gold, understated, honest, eternal. Nolan held it gently. "I don't want what we had before," he said. "I want what we built after." Her tears fell, slow, pure. Nolan's voice softened into truth. "Will you marry me again? This time as equals, not as escape, not as status, not as fantasy, but as partners who fought to deserve each other?" Celeste covered her mouth as emotion broke through her body like dawn through night. Not begging, not pleading, not dreaming, but ready. "Yes," she whispered, "not because I lost you, but because I earned you back." Nolan slid the ring onto her finger, hands steady, not out of triumph, but peace. He kissed her, not rushed, not desperate. Slow, deep, certain. Not a second chance, a new beginning. The empire lit with celebration, employees cheering across every floor, screens broadcasting joy instead of scandal. The world watched not the fall of love, but the redemption of it. Celeste held Nolan's face between her hands, steady, alive. "We write our story from here," she said. He nodded, forehead resting against hers. Together, always slow, always chosen. And under the same roof where pride once shattered them, love returned home. Earned, forgiven, forever.